of Johannesburg, and in Harare I still believe we have Brian Kagoro, who's a legal expert and a commentator as well. Let's just start. I wish we could listen to what Nelson Chamisa said, and we will as soon as we can, but will it be easy, Prof, for the opposition to prove the claims?
Well, this has almost become a routine. There have been a lot of terrible elections, a lot of terrible results, a lot of fixing, a lot of gerrymandering, and a lot of suspicion has arisen over time because of this history of fixed elections, as well as some very, very violent elections. So it's no wonder that people were in the streets. What tends to happen is it takes a lot longer for the civil society groups and the opposition party to get the numbers right. And then they have to go to court, and the electoral courts, of course, are heavily dominated by Zanu-PF appointments, and these things peter out in a year. And of course, everybody wants to see the president come in as soon as possible. So it becomes kind of a rhetorical and legalistic exercise. I think we have some reason to doubt the validity of the election. Early on Tuesday, one of the monitoring agencies, NGOs, found out that 21% of the 750 polling stations which had been monitored had no presidential ballot on the record. Yeah. So there was suspicion very early on Tuesday that
and no explanation for that
yet.
No
explanation. So there was suspicion very early that, and in fact David Coulthard, MDC candidate for senator and a very, very good lawyer, said this made it an illegal election. But of course, you know, in the past, the MDC and the MDC Alliance have said, well, we're going to pull out, but they don't, because a lot of people think they're going to win. So you wouldn't pass that through, you know, a democratic procedure at the MDC. So we have a lot of doubt. We have had an election which has been relatively credible. Bits of intimidation in the rural areas, problems with the free press, not being very free, and etc. Even the private radio stations are usually owned by Zanu-PF friends. So we've had those issues. But the bar has lowered a lot since the 1990s, when everybody thought we'd have liberal democracy overnight. So I'm sure this one will be seen. Of course, the question is on the 50.8. That's very, very close. And it took an hour or more last night for ZEC, the Electoral Commission, the official one, officially independent, but with lots of military people watching. It took them a long time to count the last constituency, the last votes in from Mashonaland West.
Okay, so that makes you skeptical,
yeah.
But very quickly, does it make you skeptical that the MDC, even before the counting started, seemed bent on not accepting the outcome? Does that also raise skepticism on the other side?
Well, yes, but so many elections in the past, they won, and they were denied that victory. So, you know, it's almost an expectation that's at least 75% bound to happen. But some of the rhetoric, yes, was a little bit out of place.
Let's get Brian Kagoro's view. It would take quite a lot of vote rigging, Brian, if you agree with me, to take someone from above 50%, if Nelson Chamisa won the presidential vote, down all the way to 44%. Are those numbers relevant when we look at these claims of rigging?
I think what's most important is the constituency and polling station numbers. If the results have been announced based on the constituency numbers, that makes reference to polling station numbers, it's easier to pick where there's instances of manipulation, miscalculation, or instances where there's been a sweeping of results, as had happened in one of the Chekutu constituencies. But I want you to take particular note of the following. If you subtract just 50,000 votes, or slightly less, you know none of the two candidates would make the 50 plus 1%. So if indeed the MDC case regarding Harare, their votes in Harare being reduced by 20,000 is correct, it's a much lower threshold to close.
You have to reach 50%. So do you, Brian, believe that it will be easy for the opposition to prove their claims? They say they've got all those tallies from each of the stations. And like my colleague Peter Ndoro was saying earlier, you just add it all up. Will this be easy to prove or disprove?
I don't think that it will be difficult to prove. I think that the question is, how long will it take to go through? ZEC ought ideally not to have announced or declared a winner without joint verification by the interested parties. It's an extraordinary step to have taken to have declared a winner when they didn't have a jointly signed position. If it is correct that the MDC did not sign, was not available of the opportunity to sign, or was misled, as the MDC president said. So we have many things that seem somewhat awkward or just downright out of order regarding how this has been dealt with. But if we assume that there was no malice and that these results are verifiable, there is actually no reason why that verification process, which will be have international and other observers, should not take place within the next 2 days. I think the idea that we should necessarily go to a court of law to remedy something that may not have done in strict compliance with the law sounds ridiculous. It simply elongates the process, keeps the nation in tension. I think that there must be a quicker way of doing the verification, both for Mr. Mnangagwa, who wants to proceed with his inauguration after 9 days, and Mr. Chamisa, who believes that he's the winner. I think a process must be found to have their agents, to have ZEC, to have international observers go through the V11 forms. I'm quite sure there will be V11 and the V23 forms that will be disputed, but go through all of them, do a verification. If that could take just 2 days, why is the nation being taken through all this angst to deal with such a simple matter?
Okay, so good points there. They wouldn't have signed off because they disagree completely. Professor, coming back to you in studio, what is the right thing for us to do as South Africa? I mean, our president has called for the acceptance of these results. He must have known what the MDC was going to say today.
Yes, I think the international community as a whole has been hoping that this Mnangagwa regime will be kept on. There was a lot of international backing for the coup, which wasn't called a coup, and international hopes that Mnangagwa would have a free and fair election. So I think they'll let it go, sadly. They won't give it enough time. I think it's very interesting, just to hit another aspect of this, is that at the Mnangagwa press conference, they were commenting on the police incident at the Bronte Hotel that you were talking about earlier. So this is where it's in the middle of town, it's a wealthy area, journalists from all the international press, they get an apology. Because Mnangagwa said he would, before the press conference, said he would implement a inquiry on the police actions. Within an hour, the police had twittered an apology. So this is a very careful media strategy to impress the world about what a nice, friendly new regime this is. We had a few mistakes. We thought there might have been violence there, so we sent the police, but we called them back. Yeah. But look at the look at even Chitungwiza, the township, where I'm getting reports from reliable sources that the military are going in, knocking on people's door, looking for MDC supporters and creating fear. And look at Chigutu, and I think Brian can verify this if I'm wrong, where an MP candidate for the MDC challenged his loss and won on a recount, something like this. Brian, you'll have to correct me. And he's being chased by the military. The press aren't there. The press should be there watching this. So I think in more
rural
of a broader sense,
urban,
rural
very
versus
different.
urban, what is the military doing?
You've raised something that I think is important. To what extent, if any, could Emmerson Mnangagwa have been involved in the heavy-handedness of police on the streets? Because the logical conclusion is, why would he want any trouble in an urban area when the world is watching? So is this just a hangover from how the police used to behave?
I think we should remember it wasn't the police. The police were unable to handle this. The police have been in retreat ever since the coup because the police were not on the right side of the coup. So the police are not trusted by the military. So they have been, some of them fired, some of them retained in their barracks. It's quite a lot of people on the streets don't think it's the police who are the police. They think it's soldiers in police uniforms.
Sure.
So the Zimbabweans are very, very attuned to the conflicts that are within Zanu-PF. So a lot of people are saying that Mnangagwa is being pushed by Constantino Chiwenga, who has the army he has more control over the army, or at least certain factions within it. Look, when I was there in July speaking with unemployed people, news vendors, security guards, they thought they might have to go out on the streets, which they did. But they didn't think that their brothers in the military would shoot at them, because they thought their brothers were as poor as they were suffering, they weren't getting money, they didn't think they would shoot at them. They were wrong, I was wrong. When I was talking with Peter, I was wrong. I didn't think there would be a shooting like this. I even told the Guardian newspaper writer that he was wrong.
Yeah, and you've written about this, and a lot of people just caught completely by surprise. We have to leave it there. We'll follow events, and unfortunately we can't go back to Brian Kagoro, but thank you reporting for us from Zimbabwe, giving us analysis there, and Professor David Moore in studio. We take a short break. We'll be back.